Oh yeah, little Barry White. Love the dude, man. I gotta tell you what, if there was one dude that could invoke a feeling, it would be Mr. Barry White. So welcome everybody. Favor be unto us all. As I am zooming through here, I can see that it says we are live, and of course we're live. It is Wednesday, so welcome everyone. So good to see you. Thank you for sharing your energy with this group and this tribe. It's an honor. Favor be to us all. Be of service to others. Happy birthday if you got one. So yes, indeed, we are prospering. And so in my meditation, because in my life and Lynn's life, in the midst of what would be like, bad news everywhere, I'm telling you, our lives are just, they're prospering. It's just, there's no doubt about it. And so an attitude of gratitude is exactly what, if you have that. So I said to the angels, I said, so how can I say thanks? What can I do for you? I mean, there's evidence that there's obviously an energy flowing. And I heard this distinctly, just simply mention our names. So we have in this group, we did it for 22 days and it was remarkable. Hey, Martin, Heidi, Big Al, Susie Q, how you doing? Joyce, good to see you. Nina the Mystic, she has her show right after this one at 1 p.m. on the West Coast. Martin, Heidi, good to see you. Teresa, Loretta. So we have Ariel, and Ariel is the angel of revelations. Deus Revelator. I love that. The revealing God, patron of meditation, and people gifted with clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience. Wow. Clairsentience, think about that. So that means clair meaning everywhere at the same time. We are everywhere at the same time. Protector of secrets, and hidden knowledge. And then we have Poiel. I dig Poiel. Angel of fortune and support. Deus Felinius Omnia. I love that. God sustaining everything, the patron of the renowned and the celebrity, protector of positive thinkers, brings fortune and wealth on every level of life. And I've added one more to this one for myself. That is Manakel, Manakel. That's the angel of knowledge of good and evil. Deus Omnius, Hyacinthius a Lascentens. God who supports and maintains all things. Protector of intellectuals, brings revitalization of memory and purity of mind. Oh, yeah. Teaches how to be confident and courageous, helps to find happiness, stability, and fulfillment in life. Anyway, and what's the last one? Facilitates interpretations of dreams. Oh, yeah, baby. So there you go, folks. So good to see everyone. Thank you, all the moderators and everyone participating. Thank you for hitting the button. Appreciate that as well. So did some baking yesterday. I like to bake. This is the first batch of banana nut bread. And I can tell you, according to those who have partaken of it, this is blue ribbon. I mean, county fairs at this time of the year. Oh, yeah, this is stuff that works. Wish I could give everyone a slice. Maybe one day we'll get Willy Wonka's television here, smell-o-vision. Then we can actually just say, but got to tell you what, it was a blast making. Love to bake. So, if I had a way to share, I'd share it with all of you in a second. So anyway, what else going on? Yeah, Crystal, it is really some good stuff. Hadley, good afternoon to you as well from Cape Breton. Good to see you. Rock and no fear. Indeed. Hey, Danielle, I'm jealous. Listen, and made 5 batches of it. Yeah. 3, 2, 6. So we're giving some of this away. And if I had a way to do it, man, I'd love to put it on your plate. And we're making banana not nut bread. How about that? Isn't that weird? I'm telling you, the synchronicities are off the chart. What else has happened? Got a good show going on. So didn't get the angel in from yesterday, so he'll just have to go back. So I pulled today, just saying hello, meditate in it, and I've got Ha Maya. That's HAA. So that's Ha. Maya, like, MIAH. Interesting. Angel of ritual and ceremony. Deus Septis Amaneum Feninium Tari. God of hope and of all the children of the earth. This is a cool angel. Patron of strategists and planners. Protector of people gifted with great intuition. Been looking for an angel? Hey, Lost in Space, what's happening? John Price, good to see you. Deborah, Kaz, much love to you, hon. Truth Seeker, Gaia and Paul, how you doing, Miss Trina? Teaches how to be the defender of divine laws. If I had a next mission in life, that would be a pretty cool one, but I want it on the cosmic scale. Yes. Teaches how to bring rituals into everyday life and offers protection from evil forces. Now that's just freaking cool. Come on, folks. Teaches how to bring rituals. Rituals are important. We live our lives by rituals. We call them routines, but they're still one and the same. Into everyday life and offers protection from evil forces. I love that. Provides with a natural understanding of rituals of all religions. Yeah. Helps to achieve seemingly impossible things. Bestows us with strong sense of strategy and planning. Shows how to get more organized. I like this. Encourages to seek the truth and to share it with others. Symbols of preparation and adoration for the higher one. Gotta love that. All right. Hey, I just may get some of this banana bread. I just, that would be rude, unbecoming, uncouth, uncivilized. There's an etiquette that must be followed, right? That's all right. I'll get it afterwards. Patience. What is the old saying? Patience, find it if you can, seldom in a woman, never in a man. All right, got some good stuff here. Looking into this thing, someone sent me yesterday on iron. Iron in your blood, the amount of iron you have in your blood is directly equated to, and I quote, the spiritual capacity, willpower, discernment, and ability of the spirit or soul to evolve. So the thing we're going to focus in on today is, I really got into this and it went, oh man. I mean, it's like, I said, oh yeah, we're going to dig this. So, some people have too much iron in their blood. I'm one of those. And, I don't know what your, iron count in your blood, but it's really interesting. As Trina and I were talking yesterday, the one I always remember is that when Cain killed Abel and God confronted Cain and said, your brother's blood cries out from the ground. The life is in the blood. It's there's a direct connection there. And it got me to thinking, what if you are anemic? Well, Danielle, there's a good one. I mean, I don't know. I made mango. Oh, wow, that sounds good. I'm looking at the chat room, and I shouldn't do that because I'm swerving off the road. So, got me to thinking about this whole thing of blood connected to the soul, connected to the spirit. And so I thought, well, why don't we take a little trip down the rabbit hole and let's study about, give me 1 second here, mind-body dualism. Now, this is something we don't really talk about specifically, so this is going to be fun. All right, let's go. In the philosophy of mind, which includes mind-body dualism, it denotes either the view that mental phenomena are either non-physical or that the mind and body are distinct and separable. Thus, it encompasses a set of views about the relationship between mind and matter, as well as between subject and object, and is contrast with other positions such as physicalism and enactinism in the mind-body problem. And this is one that has been thought about, debated about. I mean, we go all the way back to Aristotle. This has been that. And when you realize what is actually taking place in this place called space, you find that it's anything but real it is. For instance, all of us see inverted. What we're seeing is amazing what the brain fills in, because if it's not there, the brain will actually make it there. Our perceptions of the density of matter, space, time are all dimensional, but yet in our capacity, we see actually in 2D. But our brains convert it into 3D. Now, as we look at the diagram here, you can see how the pituitary gland, all the way going down, how this all is connected. And somewhere in all of this, the soul is connected in some manner. And if you happen to be of a triune thought, then the spirit has to have some sort of integration. And this is what we perceive everything: God, space, time. So it gets into the discussion then. Again, going back to Aristotle, he shared Plato's view of the concept is that we don't have one soul. We all actually have multiple souls. And further elaborated the hierarchy arrangement of how our souls are a part of this. They're corresponding to distinctive functions of plants, animals, and people. A nutritive soul of growth and metabolism that are all three share. So we have what is called the perceptive soul of pain, pleasure, and desire that only people and other animals share. And the faculty of reason that is unique to people only. And I would have to dispute this because I've seen animals reason. We know they do. In this view, a soul is the hypomorphic form of a viable organism. Hypomorphic. In other words, we're the animated part of the inanimate. Wherein each level of the hierarchy formally supervenes upon the substance of the preceding level, meaning you got to have growth. If you don't, in other words, you wouldn't have any need for levels. Well, all right, we continue. For Aristotle, the first two souls based on the body, they perish when the living organism dies, whereas the other remains an immortal and perpetual intellective part of the mind. Now, that's weird. You think about this. So there is a part of a soul in all of us that does die. But there is yet something of our soul that is immortal, and it is perpetual intelligence, always seeking to learn, to discover, to explore. And they say, that part could be the mind. For Plato, however, the soul was not dependent on the physical body. He believed in the metamorphosis of the migration of the soul to a new physical body. In other words, it's not really reincarnation. We're just kind of the pod people. Basically, it has been considered a form of reductionism by some philosophers, since it enables the tendency to ignore very big groups of variables by its assumed association with the mind or the body, and not for its real value when it comes to explaining or predicting a studied phenomenon. That studied phenomenon, by the way, would be what we call the paranormal. It's normal, but it's supernormal. So we get into this whole idea of dualism then. Dualism is closely associated with the thought of René Descartes, 1641, which holds that the mind is a non-physical and therefore non-spatial substance. Descartes clearly identified the mind with a conscience and self-awareness, and distinguished this from the brain as the seat of intelligence. Hence, he was the first to formulate the mind-body problem in the form in which it exists today. Dualism is contrasted with various kinds of monism. Substance dualism is contrasted, with all forms of materialism. But get this, so puberty dualism may be considered a form of emergent materialism or non-reductive physicalism in some sense. Physicalism, that's weird. Dualism, it's everywhere. Mind, body. So is it true what we've read, that the body actually has its own spirit? It seems to play host pretty well. So there's different aspects of dualism. There's substance, or what they call the Cartesian dualism. This is substance dualism, most famously defended by René Descartes, and argues that there are two kinds of foundation, mental and physical. This philosophy states that the mental can exist outside of the body. What Trina and I'm convinced that the us hovers over this. We actually encapsulate it with our energy, much like in the metamorphosis of a cocoon, even that of a fetus in the birthing of the process of the fetus growth. This philosophy states, again, that the mental can exist outside the body and the body cannot think. substance dualism is important historically for having given rise to much thought regarding the famous mind-body problem. Now, you think about it, that in the Sumerian text, it talks about Enki and his mother in the problems they had in creating a living avatar. I mean, the first batch didn't turn out so well. Many forms of the Adama that just didn't work. One couldn't seem to figure out walls. You get to a wall and it just stopped. Another couldn't stop urinating and crapping on itself. Very interesting. And at some point in time, I guess they got the mixture right of, did they create a spirit? How is a spirit created? A body could be easily replicated, but are we in the lab where we're growing brain cells that actually have eyes that look back at the geneticist? Have we created consciousness? Have we created a form of a soul or a spirit? So you have the pure Dialysm, which asserts that the ontological distinction lies in the difference between properties of mind and matter, and that consciousness may ontologically, irreducibly to neurobiology and physics. It asserts that when matter is organized in the appropriate way, i.e., in the way that living human bodies are organized, mental properties emerge. It's a natural cause and effect. Hence, it is a sub-branch of the emergent of materialism. That would imply that what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens on the earth stays on the earth. Hence, and what views properly fall under the purity dualism rubric itself as a matter of dispute. There are different versions of this dualism, some of which claim independent categorization. I mean, this stuff gets so weird that you get into it and you're going, I think, or maybe I don't. I mean, it's the old adage, if a schizophrenic is trying to commit suicide, isn't that a hostage situation? Anyway, now you have the non-reductive physicalism. The non-reductive physicalism is a form of purity dualism in which it is asserted that all mental states are causally reducible to physical states. One argument for this has been made in the form of an anonymous monism expressed by Donald Davidson, where it is argued that mental events are identical to physical events. However, relations of mental events cannot be described by strict law governed by the causal relationships. You know, our minds are not limited by physical law. Our minds are capable of breaking all physical laws. But the duality is that we constrain ourselves within all physical laws because our bodies tell us that there is such a thing as gravity. Fall out of a tree and break your arm. Well, whose fault is that? Is it gravity, or is it the fact that the kid didn't learn the principles of gravity? And then the question then becomes, well, why wouldn't the spirit have understood that aspect? Maybe because the spirit was used to always being free from the laws of physical gravity. But then again, it gets to that point, how do ghosts know where the floor is at? How do ghosts know where the ceiling is at? They seem to have this remarkable ability to maintain. I don't know. I digress. Anyway, another argument for this has been expressed by John Searle, who is the advocate of a distinctive form of physicalism he calls biological naturism. Wow. Naturalism, excuse me. His view is that although mental states are ontologically irreducible to physical states, they are causally reducible. He has acknowledged that too many people, in his views, and those of the other dualists look a lot alike, but he thinks that comparison wouldn't work either. So then you got this thing called causality. Causality, also referred to as causation or cause or effect, is influenced by which one event, process, state, or object, a cause, contributes to the production of another event, process, state, or object, an effect, where the cause is partly responsible for the effect, and the effect is partly dependent on the cause. In general, a process has many causes, which are also said to be causal factors for it, and all lie in its past. Now, this has to do with us. An effect can in turn be a cause of or a causal factor for many other effects, which all lie in its future. Some writers have held that causality is metaphysically prior to notions of time and space. Sure, this is all real. Of course it is. Completely logical, absolutely comprehensible, and essentially must be apprehendable. Causality is an abstraction that indicates how the world progresses. So basically, it's a concept that is more apt as an explanation of other concepts of progression that is something to be explained by others more basic. Did you understand any of that? I mean, this is where calculus really comes in handy, doesn't it? The concept is like those of agency and efficacy. For this reason, a leap of intuition may be needed to grasp it. No shit. Accordingly, causality is implicit in the logic and structure of ordinary language. And this is what enraptures our reality, our perception of the afterlife. How much does causality have an effect when you die, when you're over there? Is causality still a principle, a law? Is it a pillar? Yeah. Now, I'm sure all of you are just so excited about that one. So it gets better. So, Ghost in the Machine. What has happened? A lot of different interpretations, a lot of books have been written on. There's been movies about this. In essence, we're going to look at, I think, one of the more reputable journals out there. Let me get it pulled up on exactly. So we just went through the whole aspect of dualism into reality, personality, soul, spirit. So this is the Journal of Exceptional Experiences in Psychology. This is an article called Ghost in the Machine. It's a clinical view of anomalous telecommunication experiences. And I think all of us are going to enjoy this because it's very interesting, folks. So I'm just going to highlight some of the key points, and then we're going to get into the actual events themselves. So apparitions and hauntings have been reported in all countries at all times, and their cultural transformation as well known. And Schneider did his, kind of look up the references. In fact, actually, I've covered Schneider. At the end of the 1970s, parapsychologist Scott Rogo and Bayless published a collection of testimonies by the recipients of unexpected telecommunication calls that had apparently come from deceased friends and family members. Now, since this is what makes it so interesting, Since they involved material channels such as telephone calls, text messages, and emails, they play a central role in balancing out the conventional tendency towards reductionist explanations, which conceive of them purely in terms of subjective or even pathological experiences. In other words, you created the event, and somehow or another, you were able to manipulate time, space, physical matter, and send yourself a message. That's how some look at it. Now, I don't think that this is a disorder. I don't think that this at all. But, you know, in the totality of it, you have to consider that as part of the equation. So, but we're not going to focus in on that aspect. What we're going to do is get more into what these events were and kind of get an understanding of them a little bit. So basically what they figured the ghost in the machine is a subcategories of entities encountered experience of what they call EEE. So you basically have the top experiencer. I've experienced it. Many of you have. So what they title this is the entity encounter experience. Now that is at the top of the org chart. From there, we have two branches that goes to the anomalous telecommunication of an EEE to the anomalous non-telecommunication of the EE. Now, from there, we drop down into two subcategories called spontaneous telecommunications of the EE, and then another one called induced telecommunications. That's kind of like spiritualism using a ghost box, electronic voice phenomenon. On the other side of the equation, from the anonymous non-telecommunication, we have the same categories of the spontaneous. In other words, this is a crisis apparition, someone appearing at a moment, a near-death experience, and then, of course, an induced with it would be considered an ectoplasmy encounter. People who reported spontaneous telecommunications EE may seek clinical counseling because of the phenomenon's apparent inexplicable ability, which may be quite disturbing to the client owing to the high significant meaning of such events. To contribute to the development of the specialized clinical counseling strategy adapted to anomalous experiences, this paper receives some of the more the phenomenal cases, studies of them. We're not going to get into that. What we're here is just to, how shall we say, reap from the experience of these people who study the phenomenon. Let's see, in 1979, the American parapsychologist Scott Rogo and Bayliss published 50 testimonies of anomalous experiences involving telecommunication technologies. In Italy, Massimiliano Bondi collected around 40 cases after a one-year study. More recently in the UK, Cooper has reviewed and updated this study with new cases and a more systematic approach. His data collection was similar to previous methods in that the radio and newspaper articles were used to encourage people to come forward with accounts of exceptional experiencing involving the telephone. This wording is designed to avoid any bias in data collection and therefore addresses the attributes previously expressed by the critics who have naively assumed that reports have only been collected from sources who already interpret the communication as coming from a disincarnated entity. Wow. I recall the Twilight Zone did a number of really good cases. I remember the one with Billy Mummy, who eventually played Will Robinson. All right, so we have type 1, which is called the simple calls. These are the most commonly reported of phone calls from the dead. Typically, the deceased caller says only a few words and is unresponsive to any questions asked. At this point, the caller may lapse into silence as the line goes dead, but without the customary sound of the caller hanging up the phone or being cut off. Has anyone here experienced that? It's kind of hard today because everyone has cell phone. You know, very few people have landlines. Who has landlines? Good reason to have one too. Anyway, type 2, prolonged calls. These calls may last for 30 minutes or so and involved a conversation like any other telephone call. The recipient does not realize until after the call that the caller was in fact dead at the time. It would appear that the recipient's ignorance of the caller's death somehow seems to allow the conversation to last longer. That's weird. By contrast, simple calls suggest that the shock of knowing the caller is dead somehow cuts the conversation short or leaves the dead caller unresponsive. That's weird. So if you're not aware that you're talking to a dead person, they can continue to talk. But when enlightenment comes, okay, type 3, answer calls. These are cases where a living person makes a call to someone they do not realize is dead or someone who was not actually home when the call was made. The caller nevertheless receives a return call from the person they were trying to contact. These calls are usually prolonged. Type 4, mixed calls. This category was added by Cooper, 2012, to form a combination of type 1 and 2, and is evident in the case below reported by Kaspersky. In these cases, recipients may be aware of the caller being dead, yet report repeated calls and extended conversations. Type 5, intention calls. These calls are intended to be made, but are not actually carried out. Nevertheless, the intended recipient insists they occurred. Scott Rogo experienced an intention call in 1975. Intending to ring a psychologist at UCLA, he decided instead to take a nap. 2 hours later, the psychologist rang him because a volunteer had taken note of a call and requested the ring back. The call was apparently received at the very moment it was intended to be made. After this experience, Scott Rogo began to investigate his investigation of strange phone calls. I guess the prosaic hypothesis may be applied to these cases, such as amnesia about calls made during a symbiotic crisis. In other words, you're having an episode, mini stroke, etc. See, we know better nowadays. I mean, a person get a text. I need you to concentrate on this person and do this. Event happen. All right, so let's get into it. By the way, type 1 experiences were reported as occurring anywhere from between 24 hours to some 40 years after the loss of a close friend or loved one. Obviously, time is different. Spirit time is different than physical time. 10% of the cases occurred on a significant anniversary or an emotionally meaningful day. Regarding characteristics of calls, in 34% of the reported cases, there were audible anomalies such as static on the line or the caller sounding faint, hollow, or distant in tone. 6% of the calls appeared to display features of the caller giving a message or warning or emergency to help the receiver of the call avoid some form of impending danger. 10% were associated by the caller with other meaningful coincidences. All right, so here's the first one. On October 2004, at the 30 years of age, Laurent lost his dog after 16 years of companionship. During a car trip, 8 days after he exclaimed to his mother and brother, "I hope in paradise we get our dogs back. I would love to receive a sign." The next minute, he received a short text message on his mobile phone reading, "Hello, my integration was fine. Everything is okay. Julie." Since it was at the beginning of the academic year, He deduced he had received a wrongly directed message from a student named Julie, but began to wonder if it might have also been a sign he had desired. The next morning, Laurent began receiving strange telephone calls on the family landline, which we discuss below. 15 days later, he and his brother drove over to see a famous medium in Paris in the hope of finding an explanation. On their way, they stopped at a petrol station whose manager was standing behind the counter with her dog. Asking the dog's name, he was told it was Julie. The same name was the text message, and a very unusual one for a dog. He interpreted these two peculiar events as synchronicity or meaningful coincidence triggered by his dog's death. Describing them as phone calls from beyond, Laurent explained that the telephone rang day and night for several days, sometimes accompanied by a ringing of the doorbell. When he answered the phone, no one responded to his questions, and it hung up after a few seconds, only to ring again almost instantly. The answering machine recorded messages, sometimes even after the handset had been picked up. Two of the recorded messages contained laughter reminiscent of a family meeting. These phenomena were later interpreted as sporadic anomalous perturbations, which are typical of poltergeist experiences. On a recent occasion, Laurent had the distinct impression he was communicating on the phone with someone, possibly his recently deceased dog, who could only reply in Morse code. Quickly divining that one tap was for no and two was for yes, he began asking questions, some of them quite tricky. The more he interacted, the more convinced he became that this was not a prank call. The interaction was only with him, but both his mother and younger brother witnessed the call. With emotions running high, Laurent understood the meaning of the call to be that his dog was living safely somewhere with his grandfather. The whole conversation lasted more than 15 minutes, at the end of which he asked how his dog had died and clearly heard the sound of a dog panting quickly before the call ended. This confirmed his beliefs because he knew his dog had died of lung cancer, which had caused it to breathe in labor in a manner towards the end of its life. What is so peculiar about this experience is that Laurent was not alone during the call. It is corroborated by his mother and brother. The first degree of objectivity allows him to reject certain explanations, such as individual hallucination. Furthermore, he recorded the entire conversation with a small tape recorder, which he was using for his doctoral research in sociology. Laurent felt a pressing need to make me listen to all of the evidence. He was very disturbed by the experience and tried to cope with it by looking for similar testimonies. Thus, he began an uncritical explanation of the paranormal, seeking the reality of reality. These exceptional experiences seem to have profoundly upset his worldview. Case number 2, recorded simple call, type 1, Nicole. One day, Nicole noticed her answering machine was blinking, although she had not heard the phone ring. The voice message said, "All is okay. Don't worry. I'm okay, and all will be okay," and was accompanied by deep breathing and a voice that seemed to trail away into the distance as the message ended. Nicole recognized the voice as belonging to her mother, who had died 18 months ago at the age of 81. Nicole played the message to family members, all whom confirmed it was her mother's voice, after which the message erased itself. A few months later, Nicole's sister, Isabel, died unexpectedly, and Nicole made a link between the two events. Case 3, simple call type 1, Diddler and I think that is Latira, an SMS that failed to comfort. Dieter, 48 years old, lost his boyfriend, Jean-Pierre, whose nickname was JP, after an agonizing 3 weeks suffering from AIDS. Dieter prayed for a sign. 1 week later, he received a short text message at the exact time of Jean Pierre's death and on Jean Pierre's birthday. The message from an unknown telephone number read, "Above all, do not worry. I have arrived safely. Promise me you'll take care of yourself. Love you, JP." Take care of yourself had been JP's signature phrase. Didier was hysterical, no doubt. I can only imagine. That would freak me out a little bit, and took no comfort from the experience. I can dig that. At the time, he was in his car with his friend, and I think that's Loretta, who also read the message and told him to call it back. They tried 50 times, but only received an automated reply. This number is no longer assigned. This was the only paranormal event in Didier's life. The author interviewed, I think that's Loretta, elicited further details of the story. In truth, Didier's and JP's relationship had been a troubled one, as JP had been unfaithful, which was how he became infected with AIDS and passed it on to Didier. Well, now we got the connection. Loretta was no big fan of JP either, but did everything to give emotional support to her bereaved friend, Didier, who was also suffering from bipolar disorder. At the time of the SMS, Loretta was taking him out for a drive to try to get him out of his depression. Her emotional involvement may have been a key into this phenomenon. In fact, she seems to have numerous PK experiences in her life since childhood. She is now 40 and still experiences regular anomalies with TV sets, light bulbs, watches, and has had to change her insulin pump 40 times in 12 years. Wow. Consequently, I suggested to her that the SMS may have been kind of a PK by empathy, and that it was the best consolidation message she could consider to provide, even if it did not have the expected beneficial effect. She was very surprised by this interpretation. It's interesting. So did she actually do this? I don't know. I think it would be kind of interesting to really determine. I mean, is she that psychic that she could actually do that? I don't know, but that's a very good interpretation. Case number 4. Prolonged call, type 2, Miriam recorded and corroborated. Miriam, 56 years old, received a call from her dad when she was 40, 6 months after his accidental death. His voice sounded quite metallic, and the background noise was suggestive of a kitchen of a restaurant. He didn't answer his daughter's questions, but made apologies for the bad things he had done in his life. The communication lasted 2 minutes. But the strangest thing about this case is that her 2 sisters received the same call at practically the same time, despite being thousands of kilometers away. The message was recorded on their answer machines, but disappeared at the 3rd listening. This is like the 2nd time now we've seen this. I mean, maybe someone out there in the is listening to this has had a similar experience, but this is interesting. It's kind of like, Mission Impossible. If you decide to accept this message, it will self-destruct in less than after 3 listens. There's that number 3. It's kind of, wow, little strange indeed. Okay, case number 5, simple call, type 1, Nicholas, call by proxy. Nicholas, 38 years old, received a strange call when he was 28. In the middle of the afternoon, he was awakened from his nap by a call from a man with a Polish accent, an accent he was familiar with from having a Polish brother-in-law. The man told him he was in a coma in a hospital in Warsaw and asked him to say goodbye for him to his daughter, Manu, is Nicholas' friendly neighbor who returned from holiday 10 days after the call and grieving after her father's death in Warsaw Hospital after suffering a coma. Nicholas was so terrified at not being taken seriously that it took him several days before he disclosed the telephone incident to his friend. Wow. Okay. This article goes into, again, dissecting each one of these events. And I just thought I would read you their conclusions. It says, we have raised many questions for which we do not have the answers, and we hope further investigations into these largely unrecognized experiences will advance our understanding. These anomalous telecommunication experiences are still seldom investigated, despite their affinity with our society's increasingly connected modernity. They are quite probably part of Van Ludraw's embodiment disorders or complex environmental reactions. Because of the movability of the creation cut between mind and body, these experiences may theoretically be considered to lie somewhere along a continuum ranging from purely psychosomatic disorders to poltergeist phenomena. In fact, our modern environment is increasingly becoming an extension of ourselves. As with our smartphones, for example, poltergeist cases and even anomalous telecommunication experiences may be understood as an external psychosomatic reaction. Interpretation that I get in that is that we put so much concentrated energy into these black boxes that we are creating our own thought forms, our own digital avatars, our own digital golems, our own digital doppelgangers. That is the implication. And then if you take it in context with where we came in the dualism, mind, body, spirit, how does that play? Was Aristotle right? Do we really have three souls? Is it today that we're now using electromagnetic waves, that this is now the breach that's beginning to form a bridge between the next life and to this realm? Is that what we're seeing? Is this the phenomenon? Don't know. Let's see, Paul, Joe, what do you say? Electronics, either connections are more to electrical energy than we understand. I think you're spot on, sir. You get the gold star. I think it's exactly what's happening. And the fact that we're now basically immersed into this magnetic soup, is it any wonder that we're becoming better acquainted with the spirit realm? And now to the frightening realization of many people, it appears that many who do die do not get to go forward, do not get to go by go. They do not get to collect $200. Apparently, they're stuck here, which is an interesting phenomenon. So what is being stuck here? I've heard a number of EVPs lately where that's exactly what the EVP said, that they were stuck. They couldn't get out, which of course leads me to going, okay, so what are we hearing? Is this the soul? Is this the spirit? What is actually materializing? We know when we're capturing all these phenomenon of spirit beings, are these, there has to be a transmutation of photons taking place here. So there's huge amounts of energy for a spirit to materialize and actually produce photons is a huge amount of energy. What's up, Martin and Heidi? Now that's very interesting. I don't know. She said, does it say it works the other way around? My mother's phone is still on. That's very interesting. I don't think, There was an episode, and I'm trying to remember it. And I don't know if it was the Twilight Zone or what it was, but somehow or another, there was a connection, a telephone line wire that had went down into the afterlife. And this phone was down there. And I mean, there were spirits fighting each other because they could literally pick the phone up and call into the living realm. Now, what if there was a phone that was here in the living realm that was purposely done, say, by a wizard, or let's say a demigod, or a god or goddess, and they put a line into the afterlife? Why not? I love this idea. Elderberry says, I was a tech control and wideband maintenance in the 80s. Noise always sounded like chatter. Bingo. You see, there is something to this, isn't there? There really is. Hey, Jules, how you doing? Sending much strength to you, my dear. 5-1 photo. Yeah. Synthesis. One step beyond, indeed. Yeah, Susie Q, that one's a little frightening, that think that they were trapped. That's what they said. They were stuck, couldn't get out. And then the real creepy ones are the ones of children voices. You know, that's the one that really bothers me the most, because they've captured ghost children, which then leads into that thing is that well, wait a minute, you know, where they, you know, what does that say? Martin Heidi, dear, if you do, let me know. Hey, Jenny, I call the afterlife. It's a job. Indeed you do, dear. Indeed you do. Maybe a quantum computer. I love this. Well, Linda Brooks, we all love you. We just send bunches of love to you. Teresa, damn 1-800-poltergeist. I often wonder, Teresa, are we getting Beetlejuice on the other end? I mean, I think it's very possible. And, you know, and I think if our science continues to advance and we begin to understand the true properties of electromagnetism and light, and understand how, I think we may be able to shoot a beam into we can already open portals. The question is, could we take a cell phone? Well, I don't know. The cell phone would need a signal, but I love the idea about the telephone line. I got to tell you, maybe that's why Native Americans didn't want their picture. There's a lot of truth to that. Twilight Zone. Yeah, grandma called the little boy. You see, that's exactly it. Now I have the power to hang up the bill without fear. I love it. This is fantastic. I love all you guys. I mean, and gals. Man, I just give you all big hugs and everything. This is so fun. I mean, that's why I do this every day. It's a lot of fun. It's energizing. It's revitalizing. It's rejuvenating. It's stimulating. It's titillating. It's, you know, all the rest of them. So, all right, folks. Well, Nina's on in an hour. Check her out over there, Nina the Mystic. Hello, American Bully Grease. Good to see you. Let's see. Have a great bicycle ride. Beautiful day. Lost in space. Right back at you. Jenny, you're absolutely right. Going to get you on. Got to get that right. Well, thank you. Y'all are just fantastic. Much love to you, Guy and Paul. Deborah Truax, much love to you, dear. Big Al, high five to Mr. Ewan Perry. Loretta, thank you. Susie Q and all the rest of you. Yeah, I made that all the way through. Gee, I guess now that I can rhyme 3 times, that make me right on time. Missing my Sky Pilot. Just says, okay. Think the phones always are listening. Isn't that true? Boy, there is some there's truth there as well. All right, folks, I hope this was fun. I found it. I am going to go See, I actually made a special batch that actually had chocolate chips in them, just to let you know. And that one that's really good. But all right, much love to everyone. See y'all tomorrow. Make sure to tune in to Nina's show there. Miss Jenny going to get you on. By the way, if you got Friday open, send me an email. How's that? That's easier that way. Let me know. All right, get a mic stop. Okay. All right, everyone. Much later.